Okay, hey everyone, welcome. Pastor Patrick Walker. I came across something very interesting in Ezekiel chapter 45. We are talking about the millennial reign of Christ, 1,000 years after he returns and sets up a kingdom on the earth. There's a restored earth, there's a renewed and restored and rebuilt temple. And one of the things that's mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 45 are the festivals, the new moons, and the Sabbaths. The festivals, new moons, and Sabbaths. Now, Israel functions according to a lunar calendar of about 360 days. The lunar cycle, I think it varies based upon 29 days or 30 days for a month. And so if you factor in new moon would be either the first, it would either be a 1 day or 2 day celebration, depending on if it was a 29 day or 30 day month. So you'd technically have, I think you'd have, I'm just guessing, 12 to 13 of those throughout the year. And that would be when the moon is totally black and it begins to regrow, so to speak, and goes from basically zero to a little sliver in the sky and begins to grow on the 15th of the month to a full moon. All right. So every new moon throughout Scripture, this is mentioned multiple places in the Old Testament, there was a celebration time. It was just a 1 day celebration, or I guess it could be an extended 2 day celebration. And the most famous of those, I think I wrote this down, Rosh Hashanah, which is a 2 day celebration, usually in September timeframe, I think, in our calendar. And this is like the beginning of the year, the first of the year. This is the New Year's, so to speak. So you've got new moon celebration. So that's a monthly celebration, or monthly. And you've got Sabbaths. So you got 4 of those per month, for a total of, I don't know the exact numbers, 52 a year. So you've got weekly periods of rest and celebration that God has factored into his yearly calendar. So you got a weekly Sabbath, then you have a monthly new moon, and then you have a yearly festivals. And there's only 2 major festival times, and that's Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits, which goes for about 8 days. So it's an entire week. And then 50 days after Passover is Pentecost or Shavuot. And that is a 1 day celebration for Pentecost. And I think technically in Scripture, though it wasn't the big 2, but it was like the third one on the list in terms of its priority, Jewish men were expected to travel to Jerusalem. And if you are in the farthest reaches of Israel at the time, I mean, that's a 100-mile journey to get to Jerusalem. So it's going to take you a couple of days. You celebrate it and you go back. That's virtually an entire week. So you've got an 8-day celebration with Passover and then the subsequent 2 other festivals mentioned in Scripture. And then when it comes to the fall festivals, you have a 2-day with Rosh Hashanah, and then Yom Kippur, the day of where the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies. That's a 1 day. 1 day a year, Israel is to fast and mourn over their sin, to make atonement for sin, Yom Kippur. And then you have the 7 days of the Festival of Tabernacles. So you have a week festival in the spring and a week festival in the fall. And then you have a 2 day and a 1 day also in the fall. And you have Pentecost, like a 1 day in late spring, early summer. So you add all those up, you come approximately to 16, 17 festival days a year. So you think about, most people back then had never traveled for vacation anything further than 100 miles. And technically their vacation times annually, yearly, and their times of rest and their times of just stopping to enjoy creation and enjoy the Lord and worship him and reflect upon him were strategically set up on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. So you have the weekly Sabbaths, 50-something days. Then you have the monthly new moon festivals, approximately 12, 13 a year. And then you have the yearly festivals, the 7 yearly festivals, which would have equated to about 17 days. So if you add all that up, it's approximately 80 days a year, not counting travel time. And that comes out to about 25%, 25% of a year's, of the days of a year, okay? So that's a pretty significant amount of time off. So God, obviously, for those of us who are very hard workers and are diligent and feel like we don't want to waste time and we just got to keep go, God obviously strategically set up his calendar to ensure that his people took significant time off from work to reflect upon him, to read, to establish a tradition each and every year that would point the next generation to God and would enable sufficient teaching and sufficient instruction and sufficient generational transfer, so that generation after generation, because of these habitual practices, the knowledge of God and the covenant with God, this covenant commitment with God would be passed on. So I think that's pretty significant. I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, this is a depiction of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. So I'm not quite sure what that will look like in practice. I think we see in Scripture that this is going to be relevant for all the people of God all over the earth. I would assume not just the nation of Israel, but all of God's people will be functioning on one calendar, Jesus' calendar, and from his headquarters in Jerusalem, pertaining to all nations and all peoples of the earth during the 1,000-year reign of Christ. So I think it's important to know these things, be aware of it. I'm flexible. Whatever he wants to do, I'll do it. So when I enter into the 1,000-year reign of Christ, I'm happy to readjust my schedule, priorities to accommodate the king in whatever he wants to do. I'm just trying to get aware of this in advance so that I can prepare my heart with eager expectation of what is going to come. All right? Hopefully that was a blessing to you. Ezekiel chapter 45, verse 17 is where I initiated this devotional study today. All right? Until next time.